In the Huddle was created to give student athletes, parents, and coaches an inside look at the journey through US college sport and all that comes with it. The demands, the experiences, the excitement, and the opportunities available to our student athletes from around the world. Study and Play USA facilitates a comprehensive, customised approach for student athletes and families for their whole journey, from their high school preparation years right through to US college graduation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of In the Huddle. I'm your host, Claire, and we are joined today by Coach Erin Sharpe at Northeast Community College in Nebraska. Coach Sharpe is the women's softball coach. She herself is from New Mexico and is a former player in Nebraska herself, and now she has returned back to Nebraska to coach. Welcome to the show, Coach Sharpe.
Yes, very blessed to be here.
We're so excited to have you. I would love to chat with you all stuff junior college softball. And we get a lot of softball players that inquire with us and a lot of softball players that head over to America. So I'm sure everyone listening is going to be very excited to hear what you have to say. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So I'm going to hop right into it, as I always do. A lot of people that inquire with us want to know about the recruiting markers that a coach might want to see when reviewing footage and profiles and things like that. So as a junior college softball coach, what kinds of things do you look for? Like, what information do you need from a softball athlete in the recruiting process?
Yeah, I don't really look much about stats, especially here in the US. It seems as if they put every single game possible that they've ever played in. So stats wise, I'm not really ever looking for that. I do sometimes look at exit velo as far as batting. If it's above a 70, obviously those girls are probably going to go more D1. But if we can get it close to a 70, I definitely look at that. And then while I'm looking at videos, I really look towards the hitting portion of it. I see if they are closely aligned to what we work on here and the bat path that we have here. And then just kind of their fundamentals a little bit to see how far we have to work with. See if it's something that is a big project or a little project.
In your view, what would be a big project?
Somebody who doesn't have like solid fundamentals. I think sometimes here in the US, we're getting a little bit away from really like working on fundamentals from a young age. So I think just making sure they have basic fundamentals, knowing how to field the ball, obviously good throwing mechanics too. I mean, the amount of throwing that we do in college seems to really bother people's arms when they don't have good throwing mechanics. So I'm just kind of looking at that, and then as well as
with a highlight reel, what kind of stuff do you want to see in a softball highlight reel?
I really like when they have just workouts of them in cages. Game footage is really nice because obviously you can see what it's like in the game, but sometimes just being able to see what it's like in the cage gives you a better idea too if it's good to work with or not.
Good to know. And with the different things that we usually recommend that our softball players include, we have hitting in the cage, we have tee footage, we have base running, we have if an athlete can prove that they can hit home runs and have the ability to do so, we have always been told by coaches that that's a good thing to show as well. If you can prove you're able to hit a home run. We also have different one-on-one training that sometimes kids will include as well in their highlight videos. But the number one question we get across every sport is, how long should my highlight video be? What are your thoughts on that question?
I mean, you guys do it a little bit differently here, or there, I should say. In the US, they seem to like make little clips, and it's a whole bunch of little clips that you can just point out or select on. I don't even know what, to be honest, is probably like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes or so. I think that really gets you. I think also if you're putting before each like segment, like this is me batting or so that way if the coach really wanted to, they could go through and like start watching what they want to watch. I think that's just fine. I don't think there's really a time limit on that. Now, obviously, if you're getting to like 10 minutes long, then you're probably really pushing that. But other than that, yeah.
Okay. That's good, because normally I say as well, if a coach wants to fast forward, they can. And obviously, all the exciting, amazing stuff's at the beginning anyway, regardless of sport, regardless of division that you're looking at going to. So, yeah, that's really good for people to hear that. And we also get a lot of people from Australia that have very strong opinions about which softball divisions are best and which ones are worth avoiding, which I find fascinating because usually it's just word of mouth. People from Australia go over to America, they might have a good experience or a bad experience, and then come back to Australia and say, oh, don't go to that school, don't go to this division. So when someone is looking to go over to the US to play softball, and if you were speaking to everyone listening who is a softball prospect, what advice would you have for someone who's thinking about where their right fit might be in America?
I think taking the division out of it is the best fit. You got to find what makes you feel most at home since you are going to be so far away, what coaches you connect with the most, and find a school that, say, if softball wasn't making you happy, the school itself would make you happy. So that could be across all divisions. I mean, each division is going to have their really good softball and their really bad softball. So I wouldn't really look at division. I would look more at school wise.
That's what we always say as well. So I'm really glad that you phrased that so well, because we always say that exactly same thing, take division out of it. And something that I was always told when I was going through the recruiting process for my sport was, if you broke your foot and your coach left on the first day, would you still be happy there?
Yeah,
and I remember,
it's true. Yeah.
I remember hearing that as a ninth grader and going, wow, that's pretty intense of a statement to think about, but it makes so much sense. And now working in recruiting, I'm like, yep, that's still applicable today. So yeah, I'm really glad that you said that. I'm also curious to know, when you're having a chat with an athlete, regardless of what country they're from, and they're having a chat like this, like a meeting, we don't call them interviews because we don't believe that they're interviews. That sounds very formal and scary. Mm-hmm. We usually call them chats or meetings. So when you're having a chat or a meeting with a prospective person that you're looking to come to your team, what are some green flags and some red flags that you experience or you're normally see when you're having these meetings?
Yeah, just being really like attentive, asking your questions. The worst thing you could possibly do is have us talk the whole entire time, and then when we go to ask if there's any questions, they're just blank. Another red flag that I would say is if your parent is answering every question for you. I'm recruiting the player as well as the parents too, but I want to know more about the daughter herself. I want to know what her personality's like. So if you take that away from them, then I can't really get a good feel for that.
Yeah, agree. We normally say that it's good for the athletes to chat with you directly first, and then their parents can join the conversations later. But we feel like, as you're saying, you're recruiting them. So we're not in any of the chats either, because naturally we're not trying to get a scholarship.
Yeah.
So it's, you and the athlete. What are some things that you have found that are really good? Like maybe think back to like one of the best meetings that you've ever had with an athlete, and what kind of stuff happened in that meeting that you were like, wow, that was really good.
I think just natural conversation. If you could go back and forth and hold a conversation with the coach, we're not all scary at the same time. And I know it can be really hard to just like kind of let your guard down a little bit, but just natural conversation. And so that way it doesn't feel like we're just like throwing a spiel at you. And that way, like we can feel more of a connection too.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Because I'm quite outgoing, so I feel like I've never had any issues with that. But I'm thinking about all the more shy people that we might be working with, as well as more reserved people listening to this podcast that are not comfortable in front of a camera, not comfortable speaking to a coach. So maybe even advice for them can be also to practice having a conversation with a blank screen.
Yeah, I mean, it's awkward for us too. I mean, I'll say it first, like I'm not the best speaker either, but the more that like the conversation goes both ways, the easier it is for both. So
yeah, okay. That's awesome. I'd love to hear more about your experience moving from New Mexico to Nebraska, because as I was saying off camera, we get a lot of people from Australia, which is one of my favorite places in the whole world is living in Australia. It's been amazing. And the weather here is great. The people are great. The lifestyle is great. And so normally we have a lot of people that will move to America, and 90% of the time the weather is slightly worse, regardless if that's Washington State or New York or Chicago. Like it's always usually slightly worse unless you're in Miami or something. So someone who's moved from New Mexico to Nebraska and played in Nebraska and is now coaching back in Nebraska, what are your thoughts on or comments on someone saying, I do not want to play my sport in the middle of the country in Nebraska?
I mean, it's more of a mindset. I mean, everywhere you go, you're probably going to have some really cold games. I mean, I'll say it first, like one of the coldest softball games I've ever played in was in Dallas, Texas, and that's considered the South. I mean, it's not going to be your average 60-degree weather all the time, but you do get different cultures. The people are really nice out here. Coming from New Mexico, I could definitely say that. Like the culture out here is very friendly compared to down in New Mexico. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be cold. We have the indoor facilities to work through the cold weather. We do travel down south as much as we can to play in the early spring. But you're not always going to escape it either. Last year we did get lucky, and I think we only played 2 games in like the 40s. And there are rules too. So say if it's like, I think, below 32 degrees, if we're not allowed to play. So there are restrictions too. It's not like we're just going to go out there freezing cold weather, but yeah, and we also properly dress our players as well. Everyone's going to get the proper equipment to be able to handle the cold too. It's not like you're just coming out here with a hoodie expecting to play either. So yeah.
That's good. I think some people imagine, moving over and having no warm weather clothes. And we always recommend as well, if someone's moving to a colder climate, to not buy any clothes in Australia. Wait till you get to that city in America where they actually make cold weather clothes properly, then buy it there instead of going like Australian cold.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about who you want to recruit, and we were talking about this off camera as well with team culture naturally for anyone listening is important regardless of what team you're on, what age you are. So when you think about team culture, what is something that's super important to you about making sure that your team culture is solid?
Just recruiting good people. I shouldn't have to harp on somebody to just be a good person, whether that's on or off the field. If we can create that family like culture, then that's half our battle in the first place. So good culture girls that treat their parents and family good as well as their teammates. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, awesome. We tend to work with some really nice people, so we experience that a lot, which is great.
Yeah.
How can you tell? This is a very direct question, but obviously I'm American, so I always like asking the direct questions. How can you tell if someone that you're recruiting is not going to be a good cultural fit for your team?
I mean, obviously sometimes they put on that front right away. So I think just meeting with them more than once, obviously, to try to get a better feel for them. Seeing how they interact, whether they know you're there or not, too, is a big thing. Also, just knowing who they know as well, like who their friends are. Sometimes you may know more about their friend, and if they're good friends with somebody else that's not a good culture person, that kind of speaks on them as well. So,
yeah, that's very true. Very, very true. With the recruiting process, we always talk about the transfer between junior college and a 4-year school. We get a lot of Australian parents in particular that say to us when they've never met with us or don't know much about the pathway, what are the likelihood of my kid actually transferring from junior college? Like, does that happen? And it always makes us smile because we know that is the purpose of junior college, to transfer. Everyone has to leave. So what are your thoughts and what's your process with your team on helping athletes to transfer?
Yeah, I think it just kind of goes back to the finding the right school for you. Definitely ask the questions of, are you using your program to build athletes to go on and transfer, or is it just another 2 years to play? For us here at Northeast, we're definitely in the culture of building athletes right now. I want to see them go on and play at a school that they never thought they could go to. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We want to work hard, build them up. I'm also not afraid to make connections. So if there's some school that a recruiter of ours really wants to go to in the future, I will do whatever I can to get them there as well, as far as connections. Sometimes it is all about connections as well. But as long as they are good culture kids, I have no problem putting word out there for them in the future. So.
That's awesome. And when do you normally start that process? So if you're working with a freshman, when do you normally start having conversations with those athletes and four-year coaches about transferring?
So with the freshmen now, I'll start talking to them, see if they have an idea of what they're looking for in the future. I mean, sometimes that switches all the time. We really hold off until fall of their sophomore year to really start talking to other coaches as well, just because, especially with the transfer portal and everything like that, it does get a little hard as far as talking so far out, especially with transfers. So,
yeah, okay. For those people who don't know that are listening, can you explain a little bit what the transfer portal is?
yeah, so the transfer portal is open to all NCAA students who no longer feel like their school is a good fit for them. They can enter the transfer portal, and it's just as a big open web sheet, pretty much, that all NCAA coaches get access to. They don't have to have a special release or anything like that. So it's been pretty chaotic now that they've taken away all restrictions on it. So.
Because we here in Australia see a lot about the transfer portal just for Division One. So I think that the media that we get here is all about the transfer portal for Division One. But I think it's good that people listening know that the transfer portal also exists for Division Two and Division Three NCAA as well. That's good.
Yeah, I do think with the transfer portal, it's almost seeming as if like it's a better thing to go to JUCO right now. You do get 2 years of playing under your belt. A lot of these girls that are entering the transfer portal are girls that have like maybe sat for 2 years and want to go on. But as far as like a JUCO and compared to a girl that's only sat for 2 years, they want to see those live stats sometimes. So that's why I'm a big advocate about JUCO softball. So.
We are big JUCO advocates as well, and that's why we're doing
Yes.
so many different podcasts about it. There's a lot of myths that we always try and bust, like we naturally on Netflix, we had Last Chance U, and that didn't always put JUCO in a good light. And I remember when it came out and I was like, oh, I wonder what people are going to think in other countries about junior college now as a result of this show. We have more people now considering JUCO than ever before because of how wild the restrictions are with the roster caps and everything like that. So we at Study and Play are huge advocates, and there's a lot of myths that we want to bust about it. Do you mind quickly explaining the different divisions within the junior college system for softball?
Yeah, so we have D1, D2, D3, just like the NCAA. D1 can offer full ride scholarships that cover housing as well, where D2 we can only offer academic scholarships. And then D3 is all academic scholarships from the school. So the difference between obviously D2 and D3, D2 is we can cover your full tuition as athletically, where D3 they have to earn academic scholarships.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for thank you for explaining that. We always try and explain that as well, but I like hearing coaches describe it. So we know that there's athletes where you're saying before that the goalposts change, where they think they might want something and then down the track it changes a bit and they think, oh, maybe I'm best suited for this kind of program. And a question that I actually asked someone that we were speaking about off camera, I asked another softball player on one of our podcasts, I said, what are your thoughts on someone from another country saying, I will not go to college in America unless it is NCAA Division One?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just limiting yourself. D1 is big. Everybody has that dream, and there's many different ways to get there as well. For example, our conference itself, the ICCAC, consistently sends girls to big D1s after they get done playing here. So there's different routes. That's kind of like the big myth, like the D1 or bust. That it's even here in America as well, but I don't think you're giving yourself a fair opportunity to look at other divisions.
Yeah, totally agree. And the other conversation we had as well with that athlete off camera was she was saying that she herself was D1 or bust and did not want to go to America unless it was D1. And then she said she looked back and she was like, what was I thinking? And she's so happy.
It's a different mindset. And at the end of the day, you're getting your school paid for. That's what you're using softball for. So I think sometimes you need to look at it that way rather than just being with the big names on your chest.
Yes, yeah. And I always say as well, a lot of the schools here that people know about are from merchandise that stores are selling. So we have Kmart here who has like these $10 t-shirts from Cornell and Duke, which I think is illegal anyway, but like lots of branding from big D1s. They all happen to be D1s. And it's really interesting having moved here and only seeing those schools represented in merchandise that's being sold in stores. So that's why I also think that this junior college podcast series that we're doing is so important so that kids from all across the world can listen to coaches in junior college talk about how great it is and the benefits of it. And yeah, I'm like super passionate about it, even though I'm talking in a monotone right now, but very passionate about that. And yeah, we try and help as many people as we can, regardless of what route that is through. So yeah, very, very much appreciate you taking the time to talk about that. I also wanted to talk about something that might be a bit controversial, but athletes that we work with across all different sports, as well as athletes that we haven't worked with that try the process on their own. A lot of people here in Australia think that representing their country on a national team equals NCAA Division I interest immediately or NCAA full scholarship. And I was curious to know if you could talk a bit about that, of how people here thinking Australian national team representative, oh, I must be straight away talking to Division One.
I mean, it kind of just goes back to what these other colleges have as far as needs. I mean, you're entering into kind of like a portal where there are just so many athletes that are trying to find those limited D1 rosters. So I think it's kind of like just also limiting yourself, thinking that that's like the best play that you can get, which in reality, like you have those Power 5 schools that are going to be the best play. But kind of like what I was saying earlier, like we're going to have some really, really good softball play here in the ICCAC that can compete against those really big D1 schools too. So
yeah, that's good. Good for people to hear that. And for someone whose dream is to play in college softball in general, what kind of advice would you give them, whether they're in a 9th grader, a 10th grader right now, someone who's 3rd year high school? What kind of advice would you give a softball player listening to this podcast who really wants to be in the best softball form that they can be for the recruitment process? What kind of stuff would you recommend them to do?
I would say the best thing that you could do is learn how to work through failure. Our game is just such a big game of failure if you really think about it. If you go up to bat 10 times and you get 3 hits, like that's average, when in the reality you failed 7 times. So just really being able to have the mental mindset that um, like a so what next pitch type of mentality, just a strong mental and yeah, working through failure. Um, I would say also just really learning the fundamentals. Those never go away whether you're in college or not. You do fundamentals every single day. So just really getting used to it and never being too big to work off of a tee or just off your knees working on glove work. I would say that's my advice.
Awesome. I'll have that as one of our blurbs to tell people when they chat with us about the US pathway. I'll take that snippet and say, this is what you need to work on.
Yeah.
And the last thing I was going to ask you as well is there's a lot of support and one-on-one training that happens in America as I experienced growing up there. I don't see as many athletes here working with people one-on-one, whether that's like a softball specific coach or a strength and agility coach. I was curious to know, in your opinion, if you think that one-on-one training is something that can be really good for athletes to do here in Australia, because so many people are doing that in America to kind of help even out the playing field a bit, to kind of work towards getting on the same similar level to an American athlete who's been doing that kind of stuff since they were little. What kind of things do you think that an Australian or someone who's listening to this podcast not from Australia could be doing extra away from games, away from team training?
Yeah, I mean, lessons are such a big thing right now, one-on-one lessons, whether that be pitching, catching, your specific position, hitting is a big thing as well, even throwing. Like there's one-on-one lessons for everything right now. I do think it gets you um, the eyes to correct some things, but then sometimes I think we kind of overcorrect at the same time rather than just letting our bodies figure out what they're doing. But yeah, one-on-one lessons, I think sometimes you can over coach a little bit. I think sometimes the best thing you can do is literally go into the backyard and play with some friends and stuff, and you find out a lot about your body rather than just going through lessons and spending a lot of money.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Coach Sharpe, for chatting to us today. I hope everyone listening learned a lot about softball recruiting and things that they can work on as a softball player and the assistance that they can get if they come to Northeast under you to transfer and learn and grow as a person. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy day to chat with us. We appreciate it so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.